Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to the hundreds of people live in Leeds and the thousands listening around the world, which is, it feels like Josh Warrington should be kind of popping out at that point. But I'm Dylan Thwaites, and thank you everybody for attending and giving us a chance to explain how we think we can help get fan ownership into Leeds United. I think the first thing that we need to recognise is that there are things that we can influence and things that we can affect and the things that we can't. The opportunities that will emerge over the next few days, few weeks, few months, we can't affect that. Things will change. We can't affect that. But we can actually affect our luck. And that's through preparation. So luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Get ourselves into a position where we are prepared for the opportunities that emerge. And that's when the luck comes and people will say, oh, wasn't that lucky that we were ready for this? So today really is about trying to find a way of being prepared for whatever opportunities emerge. Over the kind of 90 minutes that we're aiming for here with injury time, we'll be looking to do the introduction, the financial status of Leeds United, so we can kind of scope exactly, where things are. I'll talk you through what our plans are. We're then very fortunate to have the best striker Leeds United's ever had. He's a passionate Leeds fan, Alan Clark. He's going to have a few words. And then we'll break out into smaller groups. The theory being that if we have a room this size with people all trying to debate and talk, it doesn't allow the kind of quieter voices to be heard. So we'll break it into 4 groups, which will be smaller size, easier to kind of ask you questions. We'll make a note of all the questions from all the 4 groups and we'll answer them later online, any that have not been answered in the groups. And then we'll finish off explaining how we would implement these plans. So I think it's fair, first question really is how we got here. Why this random group of 15 Leeds fans think that they've got an answer as opposed to anybody else. So the founding 15 before Christmas, 22nd of December, 15 people got together who really didn't know each other. I knew one other person in the room, most of the people knew maybe one, some people didn't know anybody in the room. And I think that was really helpful because what we did was just listen. And there was no cliques. There were people there was the chairman of Lust there, but it wasn't a Lust agenda. Gary Cooper was there, it wasn't a Gary Cooper agenda. Mike Farnan was there, it wasn't a Mike Farnan agenda. It didn't have a leader, it didn't have a chair, didn't have minutes taken. We just sat around the table and listened. There were 14 people in the room, and Petter from Norway online, also so that's 15. And it was really good to just talk to proper Leeds fans, some that go to every match, some that go to some matches, some that are more online based fans, to have a variety of fan views, including from outside of the country and all over the country. The profiles of the people that were in that group of 15 I think are all on the seats for people to read. We tried to make sure that we just realised that it's just random that it was us 15. I think any set of 15 fans who did the same thing would probably come to the same kind of conclusions we did. So the things we agreed on. At the end of that meeting we agreed that Leeds needed to have some form of fan ownership, some form of fan representation. We all think that we need to get that family feel back. I mean, when you talk to any of the Super Leeds team, the feel of a family, the people who washed the kit or made the tea were known by first name by everybody who worked at Leeds, by Don Reevy. They knew it was a family. That's something that we've always kind of been proud of. And I know that, you know, when you're on holiday and you just spot that somebody's a Leeds fan, there's something, you just know they're a Leeds fan. It's that part of that family thing. And we realise that, you know, we've had 12 years probably of trauma, and we're losing that feel of being a family, and we think that it'd be great if we could just get that back. Yeah. Thank you. And that obviously leads into this lost generation. We're all aware. I mean, it's really good that we've got a range of generations through in this room, and you know, I really appreciate it. I mean, I talked to the lads at SS5 who've got the singing back into Belgium, which is fantastic, and they're, you know, tend to be younger, not all of them, but they tend to be younger. But we've got the generations here, but we know. I know I've got kids 19, 21 and 6, all Leeds fans, but I know how difficult it is to, as time moves on, to keep being interested in coming back. It's not as enjoyable as it used to be. We know that. I mean, Tuesday night was an exception, but generally it's not as enjoyable as it used to be. And I know that as I talk to people, a lot of people are getting. I know that we've lost a generation. I mean, if we don't sell shirts outside of the club shop for 10 years, you know, is it a surprise that you don't see many Leeds shirts around outside of Leeds and even in Leeds? So we all agreed that we need to recover that lost generation. And sadly, we all agreed that this could be the last chance to save Leeds United. That we're in a tough situation now, and you know, we could lose Leeds United. We could be Leeds United Red Bull 1 year from now or 3 weeks from now. We could lose Leeds United. We could. There's so many range of things and threats out there that this could be the last chance.
I disagree with that.
Just a second. No, okay. We'll have the debate about if it was Leeds Red Bull or whether it was Leeds United or not. But it works better if I've got the mic and I talk, and then we'll do that. I'll give you a chance to sing at the end. Okay, so what happened? Obviously, as Leeds fans, what choice did we have? We kind of recognised that this was a problem, and we talked about it, and we got a choice. Do you just walk away from that, or do you keep fighting? Do you say, well, that's the way it is? Or do we walk away? Yeah. We're not. It's not the Leeds way, is it, to walk away? So it's that we keep fighting. So around the 15, I agreed that I'd lead it for just these 4 weeks, just to try and get us to this point here, and see what we could achieve, see whether we could actually get this. And this has succeeded. Really beyond our dreams of where we could have got to. You know, we have got a little bit of groundswell of opinion. Certainly in the real world, the fans groups are very, very positive towards it, and that's really been helpful. I know that it's probably worth me just saying why I was kind of asked to lead it rather than anybody else. I think probably, primarily, we were aware that there's so much tension of people saying, oh, I'm pro-Cellino, I'm anti-Cellino, I'm with Lust, we're not there to be another faction. So really, I think it was important as we looked around the room that we didn't have, oh, this is just another Gary thing. This is Mike Farnham trying to lead this. This is a Lust initiative. That it's something that's very transparent. It's not in competition with any other organisation. It's not designed to be around. We haven't created a logo or anything. We're not designing ourselves to be around for long. And I think also my background as an entrepreneur and as a business person who's built a business and understands the merger and acquisition and understands how investment bankers work and their ethics and their motivations. And also because I sat in the room with the members of the Farnham Verity group, I think if people heard the interview on Radio Leeds last night, I paid a bit of money and it's enough for me not to have to work, but if I pay footballers' wages then I will have to work. So I'm not the guy who's going to save this, but I also sat in a room and met these other rich Leeds fans who are in a position to put 10 times the amount of money that I was talking about. Half a dozen of them sat in a room, so I know that they exist. So I think that was the reason why people wanted me to kind of take it forward, and I've kind of given it 4 weeks of effort, as it were. It's not just me. I mean, the enormous support that we've had is just incredible. I mean, amongst the 15, absolutely, people like Mike at Aging Teak Desk, the background work that's gone on, people like Petter over in Norway. And I don't want to just pick individuals out, it's a bit unfair really, but the amount of work that's gone on, we actually counted up that there really has been 30,000 email exchanges since the 22nd of December. We've given this a proper effort. I think the thing is that we don't want to walk away and say we didn't try. We don't want to be 5 years from now and say we didn't try our hardest. So we put the proper effort in to try and find how this works. So, a lot of emails, thousands of interactions on social media, and dozens of meetings, either with fan groups or with authorities who know more about different things. We've had hundreds of offers of assistance. That's from people in legal, financial, for marketing, administration. Great support from ex-players and coaches, from people inside Leeds United, currently inside Leeds United now, who want to help us. People inside GFH who want to help us. Interesting. And from fan groups, and from politicians, and right across the globe, from people in the Gulf to people in North America. And also we've established contacts with a number of wealthy Leeds fans. So now we know the position that the people in the Farnham Verity group are very supportive of what we're doing. Not that we have to rely on their wealth, we need to be independent of them and not have to rely on their wealth. But we know that they're supportive of what we do. But we also now know we've got access to some other wealthy Leeds fans who are also interested. So there is a potential, as opportunity comes along, for wealthy Leeds fans to get involved. But we're talking about what we can do as just normal fans. To get a feel for the kind of money that we could raise as normal fans, the first 50 people in this room, so back there, we asked them to tell us if we worked something out that was workable, what they would be prepared to pledge. What kind of money would they be prepared to pledge? So 50 people. And bear in mind, it's 3 or 4 times that. We got pledges of $250,000 off 50 people. Now that's £5,000 a head. Now, I'm not saying that every Leeds fan is going to put £5,000 a head in. But what I'm saying is, in this group, you're likely to be much more committed than average Leeds fans. But we've got 4 times as many people as in this room listening online now, hopefully, if the feed's working as well as we hope it is. It just gives a feeling of what the potentials are for us to be able to raise some kind of money. And in our view, we've got to give fans a voice. In order to give fans a voice, we've got to have chips at the poker table. As much as the people I met in the Farnham Verity group are Leeds fans, I don't think that they're going to charitably hand over a share of the club for fans to participate in. I don't think that's happening. We can ask that. I don't think that will happen. If we're to get a voice, we've got to claim it as our own. We've got to go out there and actually add value, both as a united fans' voice, but we've got to actually have some cash to go out and do that. So we've got to go and raise some money. I mean, the most that's been raised by any fan group at the moment is A.F.C. United of Manchester. Promise not to use the word scum, and then that's why I just turned to him. So, you know, A.F.C. United of Manchester raised 3 million, so what would we raise? We're targeting 10 million. But truth be told, if we make 5 million, that's enough for us to have an impact. That's enough for us to start to have an impact on fan representation in the club. And if A.F.C. United Manchester raised 3 million, we ought to get our act together well enough to earn more than that. Our plans, the objectives. So it always makes sense to try and kind of understand what we're trying to achieve before we come up with a solution. So what we're trying to achieve is we want to get fan representation and ownership of at least some of Leeds United. We want the fan representation to be both widespread and influential. That means we don't want it to be a handful or a dozen fans. We want it to be thousands of fans that are represented, that it's wide-based, but we want it to be influential. It's no point having a system where there's 20 or 30,000 fans but we have no influence. It's pointless. We've got to be influential. It's got to be flexible enough that it can work alone, it can stand alone, that we can have influence just by ourselves as a standalone unit. And this is what I'm talking about, the chips at the poker table. We've got to be influential enough and flexible enough to do that. But at the same time, it's got to be flexible enough that if the opportunity exists to partner with other like-minded rich Leeds fans, then we can do it. So this is trying to paint a picture of what we're trying to achieve. And obviously it's got to be flexible enough to be impactful in any scenario, because as I said right at the start, we can't choose the opportunity that's going to emerge. We really don't know. I mean, you think 24 hours, in the last 24 hours there's so much that potentially has changed or hasn't changed with, you know, Andrew Umbers is the new chairman, Cholino's not until 11th of April. Ken Bates tells us that 8 million has been invested into the club, that he read about it on Company's House. It isn't at Company's House. Where did he get that information from? You know, that's in the last 24 hours. We realise that the scenarios, we can't plan for the scenario. We don't exactly know what the scenario will be. We've got to create something that's flexible to deal with whatever the scenario is. So our first step really, and I'll come back to those objectives when I come to the kind of solution, is just to understand the financial status of Leeds United, because I know the interview I did on Radio Leeds yesterday, there was certainly a lot of people really surprised at the figures that I was talking about, but these are published figures, and it's clear therefore that I don't think everybody's kind of understanding where we're at as a club. If we look at the turnover, so years 2011, 2012 are under Bates, the declining, with the boycott, the declining attendances. 2013 is effectively GFH. 2014 is GFH and Cholino. Probably 2/3 GFH, 1/3 Cholino. We can see that the turnover has declined over that 4-year period by a quarter, down from 32 million down to 25 million. And if we're guessing what next year's figure will be, attendances are about 10% down on last year, and turnovers are generally driven. No, that's a separate line. It's just straight. So the question was, does it include player sales? That's a separate line. That's just money coming in. Now, that in itself is a difficulty, and that reflects what we're talking about people not enjoying watching Leeds as much, generations missing, and people not coming as often, and the general turnover. So that's a problem in itself. But really what compounds it is the costs. So in 2011 we had 26 million of administrative costs. Administrative costs is what they put on the profit and loss account that they submit to Companies House. And it's a catch-all, it's difficult to spot, you know, what exactly it is. But it's all the costs that the businesses kind of taken. So under Bates, the costs even under declining turnover went up from 26 to 29 million. As soon as GFH arrived, another 6 million of costs occurred. Speculation says that that's probably a lot to do with management fees. You know, there's a lot of leaked documents from GFH at the moment, but there's nothing that I can see that can directly be attributed and prove that that's the case. However, we can say whatever happened in the GFH, there's an extra 6 million of costs, despite turnover declining. And then last year under the GFH and last part of the year with Cellino, that went even higher, 37 million. Now, I don't know if there's any accountants in the room, but if you've got 25 million of turnover and 37 million of costs, you know, you're going to have problems. So it's not surprising that we've got problems. I thought another figure that's not included in the administrative costs, that comes out after the administrative costs, is interest payments. Under Bates, virtually non-interest payments. GFH arrived 1.2 million of interest payments, and last year GFH and Cellino, 2.1 million pounds of interest payments. I mean, that's more than it costs us to rent Elland Road in interest payments. You know, it's a difficult situation now. So, no surprise that the profit after tax is a disaster, the brackets is a loss. So, under Bates, 3.5 million of profit, virtually break even as people boycotted. GFH moving up to more or less 10 million of profit loss of loss after tax. And last year, under GFH and a third of the year under Cellino, 22.5 million of loss. Now, Matt Child, I think, at the interview yesterday with the BBC said that there's been major improvements in the profit and loss account. And I think that's extremely plausible, and I think 2015 will show nowhere near that level of profit after tax. I think the turnover will be down, which is difficult, but everything we've seen since the summer suggests that the admin costs will have also declined substantially. And you know, if part of the problem was management fees, you've got to believe that the management fees have also declined. I think the interest may be higher, but the other thing that comes into that profit after tax is the players and the sale of players. I've just picked this up here, just as it's the second line, the transfers net. In red, that's where we've net sold 3.7 million of players, net sold 3.9 million of players, and last season we actually net bought 400,000 of players. That's up to June. This season we're going to be a net seller unless something dramatic happens in the next few weeks. But if we did in fact get 11 million for Ross McCormack, that's going to help that profit figure. So I think what Matt Child's saying about the profit and loss being much improved really it really ought to be the case. The other figure I've just taken there is the wage to turnover percentage. Only just to show that Leeds United is a very viable club. But we know that our turnover is the biggest in the Championship outside of the parachute payments, the teams coming down from the Premier League. But our wages to turnover, i.e. how much we're paying for our staff, is amongst the lowest in the Championship. The average in the Championship is 110% of turnover, which is obviously unsustainable. Everybody's taking a gamble on trying to get into the Premiership. 75% is seen as a sustainable figure. You can see last year we went above that. But we're still well below the average in the championship. So we've got the highest turnover by parachute payments, the fourth highest. In fact, I think we've still got higher turnover than some with parachute payments. So we're in the top 4 in terms of turnover. We're in the bottom half in terms of what we're paying our players. You know, that we ought to be able to be paying our players a lot more than the position. Now the 89% is interesting because when I actually queried into these figures, the wage to turnover figure isn't actually players' wages that people quoted, it's the total wage bill of the club. Now in normal clubs, the amount that directors are being paid and such like is relatively small relative to players. I mean, a director's being paid as much as an 18-year-old or something like that. So it doesn't really affect things. But what looks suspiciously like the case in 2014 is that the director's wage bill has actually influenced that, and that's the thing that surged ahead rather than the player's wage bill. I bring this up because it just explains why this is a sustainable business. I'll pick up on that later.
Dylan, will that include Sean Harvey's severance fees, that number?
Probably will, yeah. Yeah, probably will. Because when they're trying to do these stats across all of the... Sorry, the question was, does that include Sean Harvey's severance pay? What they try and do is try and get the same figure from all the clubs so that it's something. And because it isn't broken down into, or not all of them are broken down into playing staff and others, they just take the employment cost kind of figure. And something like that would probably go in there. You'd have to look at the accounts to see whether it's been separated out and not in the employment cost, but could well do.
Do you know how much that was?
No, and to be fair, I'm talking off the top of my head on something like that. It'll end up being peripheral in the thing. I'll kind of just keep rolling it. Now, that's a profit and loss account, which, as I say, should get better next year. The balance sheet, unfortunately, I don't think is looking very good. This is the amount of debt we've got. Bates, in 2010, have got 9 million of debt. Obviously, as we started boycotting and we started having more problems, you had to borrow more money from things like the food income and things like the tickets. And obviously, we did get some nice cladding and everything for that money, so that's good. But the debt did rise, 9, 16, 21. And then it continued rising with GFH, a further 11 million of debt was loaded in too. And then with Chelino, a further 10 million of debt. So now we've got 42 million pounds of debt, which is enormous for a club that's in the Championship. If you think of the debt that we had under Ridsdale, we could deal with that, kind of, because we've got 2 teams worth of Premiership quality players to sell, which we did. We haven't got 2 teams of Premiership quality players to cover this 42 million. We know, I think, that what players can we sell for millions? Cook, Moet, Byron. Yeah. Believe me, when you've got a debt sheet like that, it's the potential's there. The reason I bring it up is that puts a massive urgency, because that is the glimmer of hope. I mean, anybody who's there on Tuesday, there's a glimmer of hope there that's something we could actually take forward and build around. But if they get sold because we've got this debt, where does that leave attendances? Where does that leave the generation? When my 6-year-old, who's just 4 or 5, come to the game, big Ross McCormack fan, and he asked me naively, do I have to support Fulham now? I mean, it's, because he's a big Ross McCormack fan. I went, no, just choose another player. And then I thought, oh, God, no, which of the players should I guide him towards? Yeah, so I looked on the club calendar to see who they put in December. That never works, does it? So anyway, yeah, so he's with Byron at the moment. So let's have a see. Is that a curse? Yeah, we get sold. No, well, the council, so the question is, don't they owe each other the money that, I guess you're saying Chelino or GFH? No, both of them have done the same thing, which is what a lot of people who buy football clubs do, is load the debt into the club that you're buying. I mean, if you could go and do that in real life, that'd be a great way of shopping. But yeah, well, loads of, Man United, Liverpool. I mean, that's the way that we wouldn't do that because Leeds is more important to us than that. But the 42 million, 80% of it is debt owed to GFH. I think that's 22 million owed to GFH and about 12 million owed to Chelino. So the interesting thing is that's owner debt, and it is worth bearing in mind. But it isn't owed to each other. It's Leeds United owed Chelino 12 million, Leeds United owed GFH 22 million. I can only do that. Let me. You can see that the player set forward like yours. Naturally, isn't it? Okay, financial status. So, what I think we can get from this is that this club doesn't have a financial issue if it's managed properly. The turnover is amongst the highest in the Championship. We've got plenty of scope for getting better players in the wage budget. The money's going out the door in other ways, and it's totally manageable. So this argument that we need an Abramovich figure is just not the case. We're Leeds United. We're bigger than any other club in the Championship, earning more turnover, and should be if we've got more fans through the door because we did the right things and we kept the profits instead of losing them. We've got to be rid of this owner-imposed debt. If we got rid of 80% of the debt that is there, us owing money to the people who own us, we're not in a bad position because 20% of 42 million, whatever that is, 8.5 million. That's a manageable debt. That's taken us back 5 years. That's totally manageable. And the good thing is financial fair play, although it's kind of clobbered us in the transfer window, is really helpful to us. I mean, I think it was devised to help the big clubs be big clubs. And we're a big club, so it's going to help us. But we need to get over this hurdle first. We need to clear the owner-imposed debt, and we need to manage the finances correctly, and then we'll take our rightful place. Because financial fair play means that the clubs can't keep running at 110% wage to turnover ratios. If everybody had to run at a 75% wage to turnover ratio, we'd have the best squad in the Championship. So, assuming the manager picked the right people. When I said the manager picked, so what's the value of Leeds United? That's the acid kind of test, isn't it? What is the value of Leeds United? Well, there's an interesting way we can have a look at this. The GFH kind of WikiLeaks stuff has revealed a document that was presented to their risk management committee, telling them how they valued Leeds United at 31 million when they were buying it from Ken Bates. So we know exactly what their rationale, we know exactly the formula they used to say that Leeds United was worth 31 million. I mean, having looked at it, I think they'd overvalued you. The system they're using was an overpay, but that's the system they used to value Leeds United. So it's really easy for me to give that to an accountant and say, right, just put the figures in from now, and we'll know how much GFH value Leeds United now, because that's how their risk management committee approved the deal, saying this is a way to value Leeds United. Shocking. GFH's own calculation on the value of Leeds United right now, minus 7 million. There's so much losses, so much cash flow issue, and so much debt that if they were coming to Leeds United to buy it now, their risk management committee would say Leeds United is worth minus 7 million. So if Ken Bates will pay you 7 million, we'll take it off your hands. That's what the value of Leeds United on GFH's calculation is now. So all this kind of, oh, GFH have offered it to Chilean, they're 25% for 32 million. I don't know whether they have, might have done. They know that the value of their shares is worthless. I'll go into the reason why they, in fact I'll just touch on the reason why the shares have got value to them. And it's quite clear, the reason the shares have got value is that the debt, that 22 million of debt we're talking about, if they didn't have shares, then Cellino could do something about that. He could issue more shares, write things off, and there's a risk that they'd lose their 22 million of debt. So the actual shares themselves are worthless, but they need to keep them to protect the debt. Of course, the actual value of Leeds United depends on a lot of other variables. If we drop down to League One, Division 3 as me Sniffer call it, or go up to the English Premier League, then the calculation changes dramatically. Things like exchanging that debt for equity. If they want full 20 million for that debt, or if they'll take a pence in the pound for that debt, it makes a difference. If it's a forced sale, whether that's forced by the Football League or other regulatory authorities, and obviously if it goes into administration, it's a different value again. I put this slide there just to say that it isn't beyond the scope of us as Leeds fans to actually take this 25% sale. So going back to those plans and objectives that I said about fan representation and being influential and flexible enough for any scenario to work with other people, we started to look at ideas. And being Leeds United is not easy. We looked at every idea that we've seen anybody else do, from Barcelona to Dortmund to A.F.C to A.F.C United to Portsmouth to Swansea, and not one of those systems will work in our scenario. It's a problem. Typical, isn't it? So just quickly, there's going to be a handout that kind of covers, and online covers our rationale for this, if we can understand how we came to these conclusions. But quickly, why can't we just as fans buy into Leeds United and say, look, we want to have £100, can we put it into Leeds United? To do that, we need the consent of the owners to deal with multiple shareholders and to want to do it. There is no desire whatsoever from Cellino and JFH to do that. It doesn't matter how we persuade them, that wouldn't happen. So there isn't the obvious solution. We looked at the German models, which are really good. There's 4 different kind of German models that are slightly different, but they're all based on the principle in law that the fans have got to own 51%. And we looked at Dortmund and St. Pauli, and a really radical kind of cooperative one, which is called Fortuna Cologne. The trouble is, even though after we looked at them, it's clear that model wouldn't be allowed, wouldn't be legal with the Football Association or the Football League, because it isn't capable of going into administration, ironically. The Football League needs to have entities in charge that can go into administration. So, as much as that's a great model, we just can't practically allow to do it in the UK. The Spanish models, particularly Barcelona, who we beat in 1975. The Spanish models, like Barcelona, they're really useful models and really would work for our kind of size of objective. The trouble is, we can't get to it from where we are now. If we started from somewhere else, it would be easy. Because you need to start with a kind of the whole company being started as a cooperative kind of company. The only possibility would be if we went into administration, we were able to buy the whole of the club and then restart it as a kind of cooperative thing. But starting from where we are now, we can't go down that line. We spent a lot of time talking to supporters direct, who were really helpful which is LUS, the Sports Trust, connected into Sports Direct, trying to find whether we could use their expertise to come up with a solution that would work for us. And they've got 3 solutions that we looked at: an industrial and provident society, which is effectively what LUS is set up to do, a community benefit society, and a community interest company. The biggest problem is that these won't raise we don't think these will raise the sums of money we need to do. Primarily, the Supporters Direct model is set up on a cooperative type basis of 1 member, 1 vote, which sounds good, but when you then start to think that somebody who invests £10,000 has got exactly the same say as somebody who invests £1, and that's the kind of, and I think you can go up to £100,000. We just know that as benevolent as a lot of Leeds fans are, there's not going to be enough people signing up to spend 10,000 times as much as somebody else who sat next to them and has exactly the same rights. It can work if you're trying to raise 200,000, 400, 500,000 maybe. I might get to 1 million, but we just don't think we can access bigger sums of money on a 1 member, 1 vote thing. So if we're going to try to access kind of a range of money, can we set up a private company and people can buy shares in the private company, and then the private company can buy this 25%? Yeah, we can do that. The problem is that we can't ask fans to invest into us because private companies are not allowed to create a market in terms of their shares and tout, for business, tout for people to take shares. The only way we can do that is if we become a PLC, a public limited company, where we trade on a stock market. And we could be traded on like a Guernsey market or a small market, OFX or something like that. We could be a traded company. And that would allow us then to go out to people and say, come and buy shares, and that would work. The problems with that is it probably costs us at least $250,000 to set that up. So the first $250,000 that we get in is spent immediately paying investment bankers to set this up for us. And thereafter, we probably have roughly 40,000 a quarter in fees for audit and such like. So we'd have an ongoing 160,000 fine to pay to accountants. And on top of that, we'd have to have something like a 25% free float of shares that people could buy and trade in, which would leave us vulnerable to somebody, the fans organisation, by buying up 25% of the fans' shares and taking over the influence when we want to limit it to us being in charge. So PLC doesn't work. Okay, enough about what won't work. So we ended up coming up with a unique solution for Leeds United that, we talked about it as the least worst solution, but in actual fact, as we've worked through it, it's actually quite a good solution. It actually works quite well. And this is to form a limited liability partnership, LLP. I wasn't really fully aware of these. I knew vaguely that KPMG and big accountancy firms and lawyers, this is where everybody's a partner in the business. It gives us most of the benefits of being a PLC, in that we can ask people to become partners, and we can go out and market for people to become partners, but it doesn't have anywhere near the regulatory or setup costs of a PLC. It's really easy to set up and really rapid. So limited liability partnership does work in terms of a structure for us having a vehicle to go and collect fans' money and go and invest and buy GFH. So the shares in a limited liability partnership called stakes, same thing as a share, but it's called a stake. We can create 100,000 stakes of £100, which is £10 million. People can go and buy £100 steak. I'll tell you what, I'll just drop that back. The £100 steak gives you one vote on that partnership. Now the good thing about a steak is that it can actually be held by up to 10 people. So it does allow fan groups like the supporters club or regional members clubs to actually take £10 segments to make up one share. There'll only be one vote on it, and it will be whoever's the first named person of the 10 will be the person who votes with this. But it literally allows us to take investment at the £10 level. We won't be doing it at £10 level, but it allows people as individuals, as families, or whatever you want, to put up to 10 people onto that stake certificate. So we like that it really should be able to be inclusive of virtually everybody. One of the things then that we want to make sure is that some rich guy can't go and say, 10 million, let me put 5.5 million in, got 55%, great, I'm in charge now, and I've used you, you guys have put the money in, I'll say what happens from now on. We can't let that happen, because this is for us to be independent of the rich guys. It's not saying that we don't want to work with the rich guys, because we do, because I think that would be really helpful. But it's us being strong enough to be able to stand as an individual organisation, stand as an equal power to these guys, not as their patsy. That's not what we're here to do. So one of the ways, and a great way of doing this, is that the maximum amount of stakes that you can buy is 1,000. So somebody can invest 100,000, and we've already had a lot of people talking about that might be a viable thing for them. Not least the rich guys in the Farnham Verity Group and the other people who might want to invest in Leeds in an individual capacity. £100,000 of a cheque to a lot of these guys is a rounding error. It's like, that's fine. And we're happy for them to put £1,000 into this. Okay, they get 1,000 more votes than somebody who's put £100 in. That's only 1%. If they want to influence this and make this work differently, they need to get another 49.5% of people to agree with what they're doing. So it can't be taken over, it's us, but it has the benefit of bringing in decent amounts of money. 100,000, is a healthy chunk of money. The only people who could have more than 100,000, we see the supporters organisations, bona fide supporters organisations, people like the supporters club, and I really appreciate you coming down today to listen to this. And the Leeds United Supporters Trust. I think they're all sat together. These are the types of organisations where we're going to be saying, look, if you want to do a separate fundraise, you could have up to 5% in the business, because these are special organisations to the club. They're the people who've organised fans for a long time, and it'd be great if we can have these clubs doing that. And that's the same for the guys like SS5 and SLI and others like this. We're happy for bona fide sports organisations to have a bigger stake, if they wish to, want to raise $500,000, up to $500,000. I think we'd have to, to be fair, it wouldn't be for us sat here to decide on that. It would be an executive of, we have to kind of postpone that decision for 2 or 3 weeks. I think that's absolutely viable. I mean, if a message board was going to raise more than 100,000, because if it's up to 100,000, it can do it anyway. If it thinks it can raise more than 100,000, what we've got to protect from is somebody hijacking this in some way who isn't a Leeds fan. If it's bona fide Leeds fans, I've got no problems, and if the organisation's clearly running democratic kind of Leeds fans way, then how can we have a problem with that? But so I think it has to be in specific circumstance. And really, if there's an organisation that's going to be raising more than 100,000, then we need to listen to it and see whether it's allowed to go beyond that 100,000 threshold. I'm just saying that off the top of your head, you can see organisations that could work in that way.
Yeah, please.
So anyway, the benefit of this is that this is broad-based and it raises significant sums of money. When I've put lots of business plans together in the past, and the really difficult bit is to say, put the figures against it. What will we actually raise? And we know that if there's £250,000 in the first 50 people in this room, there's probably £750,000 quid in this room, so we need 12 rooms like this, and we're sorted, and we've got the people online. But that's difficult to say. We know FC United and Manchester made 3 million, and we think that we'd built in more than that. One of the ways that I've used in the past to try and get a more accurate guess on how much we'd raise is to ask people what they think. If we get this right, what they think we'd be able to put together. And therefore we ask people, how many people do you think would give 100 quid? How many people do you think give 500 quid? How many people would give 1,000 quid? How many would give 5,000 quid? How many would give 20,000 quid? How many would give 100,000 quid? Now obviously people can go in between there, but that gives us a nice framework for us to get an idea of how much we could raise. And what I've got here is the midpoint of when people thought it through, where they thought it would be. Now you might look at it and think, I think more people than that will give 100 quid, or I can't imagine that many people giving 20,000. What I'm saying here, this is is a best guess on it. We don't know. But bear in mind, was it 100,000 shirt sales at 40 quid? Is that 4 million quid? Was it 75,000 people wanted to go and watch us lose against Doncaster, which would have been absolute minimum 200 quid a head with travel and everything? These are significant sums of money that lots of people are prepared to pay for a one-off experience of wearing the top or watching us lose a player finally. So these are the figures. We think 16,000 people would put 100 quid in, and as you see, it just drops down. Obviously, less and less, and maybe 16 people put 100,000 in. So the midway point of all these people we've asked is about 7.5 million. That's great. I mean, let's target 10 million. If we make 7.5 million, we're a proper voice. If we make 5 million, we're a proper voice. As long as we're over that 3 million that FC United did, we're a voice. But 7.5 million is a proper voice. Okay. Enough of figures. We just asked a few Leeds fans to express support for fan ownership. We made a little video. What I've got to say is that this video was put together for free by a Leeds fan, Gary Hundley, and we were just blown away how well he did it. I have actually got to say that the views expressed within it cannot and are views explicitly, the reviews that are just of individual Leeds fans in there. You'll see the one I'm referring to. I won't be taking any job interviews in Dubai. So.